Okay, so rugby union video. It's not often I do these at this time of year. It's more of a Six Nations or World Cup that I do rugby union videos. But we're looking at Wales' 12-match losing streak, and it goes back to the last World Cup. And look, we all know about the financial issues besetting Welsh rugby at this time. They're well documented. They go back many, many years. I mean, even before the 2019 World Cup, there were discussions that players may not have clubs to go back and play for. And yes, there has been some player turnover, but the one that really stuns me, the player that they've lost that really stuns me, is Lewis Rees-Zammit on the eve of the Six Nations going, yeah, I don't want to play rugby union anymore, I'm going to go to the NFL. Now, whether he makes a success in the NFL or not, that's, you know, neither here nor there. But not only are you losing players to retirement or the cap selection rule where they want to get paid at club level, they want to earn a decent living in a potentially very, very, very short career. They go overseas outside of Wales. They haven't reached the cap threshold where they're allowed to do that, and or the cap exemption rules in which to do that. And this Welsh side is exceptionally young, not very experienced. And there's another key thing: they no longer have Sean Edwards as defence coach, and that I think tells a lot about some of the blowout scores that this side have been on the receiving end of. When Sean Edwards was in the defence coaching role, even when Wales lost games, they were still in with a fight and in with a chance. And there are some narrow defeats here, but there are some, as time has gone on, the defeats are getting heavier and heavier. The last three, I mean, there's some big score lines. They've conceded over 100 points in 3 games. That's not winning form. So let's have a look at it, and we can discuss the financial state of Welsh rugby in another video, and the selection rules in another video. So Wales 17, Argentina 29 in the quarter final. They lose. This Argentina side, they're no mugs. I mean, this is an Argentina side that's beaten the Springboks, beaten the Wallabies, and beaten the All Blacks. So they know what they're doing. Well, the Wallabies, I mean, they've had a bit of a resurgence, but they are not the Wallabies of old. But the Springboks and the All Blacks are, well, they were the World Cup finalists. So this Argentina side are not a bad outfit. They really know what they're about. Their systems and their program over the last 2 decades has produced some of the world's best players, especially in the outside backs and in the tight five. So that was in the World Cup just over a year ago on the 14th of October. That quarter final. Then we have the Wales-Scotland opening weekend of the Six Nations. They lost by a point at home. They scored 26, Scotland scored 27. In years past, they win that game by that scoreline. They would flip it, they would win it, they would find a way to win a tight game. They lose that game against Scotland by a point at home. And this is going to become a trend at home, losing close games. They also lose away close to England the following week. On the 10th of February, they lose 16-14. Again, in previous years, we've seen Wales defend their way to victory and win close games like that, 16-14. And the head-to-head against England in recent years is actually not bad for Wales. I've been criticised for some of my match reviews when it comes to Wales, but that defeat against the Steve Borthwick side that we're not sure how consistent they're going to be, I think that just showed where Wales were at. Did they overachieve in the World Cup? I would say yes, they did. I think they did overachieve in the World Cup, partly because Australia was so bad in their pool, which I think helped. And I think that victory over Australia gave them a false confidence. I really do. Now, the defeat against Ireland on the 24th of February, 31-7. Ireland, there's a reason why Ireland are one of the top nations. They're regularly ranked in the top 2 or 3 in the world. Admittedly, Ireland do have some of their own faults with their system. They can't get past the quarter-final in a World Cup, and they've had some wobbling defeats of late. But the Ireland side in general, over the last decade, is one of the teams to beat, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. 31-7, disappointing result for Wales, and that is their first real blowout scoreline that we see in this shocking run. The following round on the 10th of March, they're playing at home against France. Now, they scored 24 points, and on a normal weekend, 24 points in a rugby test match would generally potentially get you a win, but they conceded 45 against France. So defensively, they are just not good enough. And again, you can see the lack of Sean Edwards as part of that defence coaching setup is very evident. They are getting smashed around a bit. Now, the final week of this year's Six Nations, they're playing at home against Italy. Now, they lost 21 points to 24. Italy with the narrow win and a fantastic win. And Italy played actually rather well in this year's Six Nations. And you can see Italy are developing. They're not the whipping boys of the Six Nations anymore. That's now Wales. And that was, again, another home loss, and that is a really bad, tight home loss where in years past they win 21-24 over Italy. So the sides they've lost against are all Tier 1 sides. So you can go, right, okay, Tier 1 nation against Tier 1 nation. There are some close defeats in there, as I say, the Scotland and England and Italy defeats, but there's some blowout scores in there, like against France and Ireland. And it did show the golfing class in the Northern Hemisphere with the French and the Irish are that much further ahead than where Wales currently at. Now, the South Africa Wales test in the summer tour, they went to the Southern Hemisphere. They got battered in South Africa on the 22nd of June, should I say, 41-13. So not a good result there on tour. And then they played 2 tests against Australia. They lost both, although with much closer scorelines. So on the 6th of July, they lost 25-16, and on the 13th of July, 36-28. So they're being competitive in those 2 matches against Australia, but Australia will say, hold my beer, because they have a massive turnaround this autumn when they come to the Northern Hemisphere. So admittedly, they have played Australia 3 times in this losing run, and they've conceded a lot of points. They've also played South Africa twice in this losing run as well, and they've conceded a lot of points. They've been beaten up, basically. They've been physically outmuscled, but we know what South Africa bring with their power game. Now, the autumn tests, the 10th of November, they lost at home to Fiji. 19-24. Now, Fiji, again, not a bad side. They're now classed as Tier 1 status or on the cusp. Fiji have massively taken leaps and bounds forward, and they've been regularly making quarterfinals in World Cups. Now, these are no mugs. A lot of Fijian players who would have either represented the All Blacks or potentially the Wallabies have now switched allegiance back to Fiji as well, which does help with their selection. And, well, there's a lot of crossover with Rugby League as well. I mean, Fiji, rugby, both codes is basically the national sport. They just grow up playing it at all levels, at grassroots and professional level. But that was a bad defeat at home. That's one of the fixtures they should have won. That's one of the matches they should have won. But then on the 17th of this month, they get battered 52 points to 20 at home by Australia. So this Australia side has had a massive turnaround in the last 12 months from where they were at the World Cup to where they are now. Wales are going the other way. Wales, I think, overachieved in the World Cup. Australia are starting to turn things around. They're still, I think, the weakest out of the 4 big Southern Hemisphere nations. But to put 52 points on against Wales in Cardiff, yeah, with a rugby league player getting the man of the match, basically, and Joey Suaalii, that in his first proper rugby match, I mean, that is just not good. You can tell the confidence with this group is rock bottom. Now, yesterday they got battered 45-12 at home by South Africa. Now, South Africa are the world champions. They are the best side in the world for a reason. But when they've played South Africa, they have just been physically beaten up in 2 tests now. They've shipped over 40 points in both matches, home and away. And you can see that the confidence is gone. I think the Italy game really killed them as a group. And I did see a post saying that we shouldn't blame, from a Welsh fan on a sports fan forum when we're talking about various sports teams and various sports going, we can't blame Warren Gatland. Well, to a certain extent you can. He is the head coach, and when he first took over the first iteration, Wales were in a similar position, and very, very quickly he did turn things around. Almost within the first couple of tests, there was a response from the players that were available to be selected. Now, yes, there are issues with player development, player retention, the pathways, finances. The situation, I think, is more grave with Welsh Rugby now than what it was when Warren Gatland in his first stint as coach. This is his second stint as coach, and apart from the World Cup, it's not been great. I think they overachieved at the World Cup, gave themselves some false confidence, and they've come back to earth over this last year with a massive, massive bump. I know England are having their problems, and I'm going to look at Steve Borthwick's time as England coach, because I think there are some real problems there as well. But Wales are in serious, serious trouble. And as I say, we can discuss the finances in Welsh Rugby, and we can discuss the issues in regards to player selection and player development and pathways. But, Warren Gatland, the first time round, he did have a positive response from the players. Admittedly, he did have Sean Edwards as one of his very able lieutenants, doesn't have Sean Edwards anymore. The defence is shambolic. Even if they are struggling, well, actually, in some of the games, they're not even struggling to score points. They're just struggling to defend. Their defence, I watching them in the Six Nations, they had no defensive structure. There was no confidence in the outside and inside man in that defensive line. They looked very, very passive and almost on the back foot straight away. That you could see that when things went wrong for this Welsh side, there was no one to grab the group together on the field and go, we're going to turn this around. They didn't seem to have that Welsh spirit of old. So while the team is inexperienced, the systems under Warren Gatland shouldn't have changed from the previous time he was there over 3-4 years ago. Something has gone wrong. Now, whether it's younger players coming in who weren't used to the Warren Gatland system, or the aftermath of the Wayne Pivac period where they weren't great either. They had one real good run in the Six Nations, but other than that, they weren't overly setting the world on fire in between the two World Cups. Is there still a bit of a hangover from that? I mean, the loss of so many experienced players, I think, has really left them with a lack of leadership and experience. And there are some players who've had to retire because of injury. But then when Reece Samet said, no, I'm going to the NFL, I think that was a sign that things have gone very, very wrong. And that maybe not everything is united within the camp. But there we go. That's a quick look at Wales' 12-match losing streak. They've got to turn this around sometime soon. The Six Nations only starts in a couple of months in February. They cannot afford to get battered in the Six Nations again because they were given a couple of blow-up scores there, and when they lost 3 tight games, which in previous years with Warren Gatland they were winning. Even with Wayne Pivac in one of his spells, in his spell in charge, they won some of those tight games. So something has gone very, very wrong. Because they've proven in this losing streak they can score points at times. They haven't scored, admittedly, over, I think it's 28 points is their maximum. And a team scoring 28 points generally wins a game. But they've lost. So they are really, defensively, that is the first port of call, is just shore up the defensive structures because they haven't got any. Now, if that means Warren Gatland has to sort of try and get Sean Edwards and poach him back to the WRU, if they can afford him, and it's whether the French are willing to let him go, considering he's really transformed their fitness and defence, or he's got to find someone similar like Sean Edwards who can help with the fitness and help with the defensive structures, because that is a big area, I think, with this Welsh side, is fitness and structure, because they just don't have it. You would expect them to blow out Fiji with fitness. Fiji beat them, and beat them quite well. You would expect them, years past, to blow out Italy, for example, potentially Scotland, because Scotland, there were some issues over Scotland's fitness, because the way they play the game, you need to be the fittest of the fittest. And Scotland and Italy beat them. Where in years past, when they got a bit fatigued at about 60 minutes, Welsh style would just grind it down. They're not doing that anymore. So fitness and defence, I think, first port of call. And then I think with defensive confidence, the attack will come. But there we go. That's my view on Wales' 12-match losing streak. What are your thoughts on the 12-match winless run that Wales are on? Can it be turned around? Is Warren Gatland part of the problem? Or is it not on Warren Gatland? It's on the union, it's on the clubs, it's on the regions, and it's on the finances of the game that are causing a lot of the problems? Or is it a mixture of all combinations of things, and it's just they've hit a rut and they can't find a way out of it? But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.